Hello, how you doing? Justin here for lesson 9 of blues lead guitar. What we're going to be talking about this time is the blues scale. I'm sure most of you have heard of it. In fact, I'm sure a lot of you are playing it already. We did talk about it a little bit in one of the earlier lessons where we talked about it just in position 1. What I want to go through a little bit more now is not just what the scale is, but how we add the note in, the different places we can add the note, and also how you might use it. So, first of all, what is the blues scale? So, the blues scale is exactly the same as the minor pentatonic scale, but it also includes the flattened 5th degree, which in this case, in the key of A minor, because we're learning our blues all in the key of A minor for now, is the note E flat. Now, if you think back to your previous lesson when we talked about the scales, you hopefully remember that we had this little scale like this in position 1 for the blues scale. Accent to make sure you remember which note is the blues note, or blue note as it's usually called. Now, really important things to know about the blue note. It's a bit of a funny note. You don't want to hang about on it too long. If you finish a lick on the blue note, it's always going to sound a little bit wrong. Sometimes wrong can be cool if you want it deliberately to be a bit kind of jarring and create a bit of tension. It can be quite a good thing to end on a blue note, but generally you want to pass through it. Now, I'm not going to write all these licks out, but I want you to experiment and see how you get going with these sort of things. So, a good example here, using this note, which is the 8th fret of the 3rd string with a little finger, usually. It's the kind of thing where you might go... You're just getting just for a second. That kind of thing. You know, you wouldn't end up hanging around on a lot. It can be quite good as part of a run here to go. That's just using our first 5th fret, 7th fret, 8th fret on the 3rd string, and then hitting that one note E on the 2nd string, 5th fret, and then back down again. It's quite a nice little fancy trick there to get that one in. But the thing that I want you to notice is that we don't hang about on it. Another good little trick that you can try is using your 3rd finger and sliding your 3rd finger up and back a fret, just from your regular pentatonic. So just when we've hit this, the 7th fret of the 3rd string there with the 3rd finger, we're just sliding it up 1 fret and back onto the blue note and off again. Just would fit as part of your whatever you're playing. Just within the scale, within your licks, you can stick that in as a little twiddle. Sounds really cool. Now, we didn't talk about this before, but you can actually find the blue note in another place, which is a very cool spot as well, and that is in the 4th fret of the 2nd string. It's exactly the same note. Now, the reason I wouldn't have talked about it before is because it doesn't fit into the regular fingering of the minor pentatonic, because it's kind of behind where the 1st finger is and you've got no fingers to get there. But the trick that you might want to try is using your 1st finger to slide back to the blue note and back again. You can hear suddenly it gives you that nice kind of cool jazzy... Doing is sliding there with the 1st finger from the 5th fret back to the 4th and back again. And it's just a kind of a slightly different approach to using that standard little finger thing on the 8th fret, you know, which most people use all the time. And it doesn't really kind of move you out of position because you're using the same finger to slide back and then back up to the note again. So that should help you out with a little trick. Just one last little blues trick I want to talk about in position 1 is if you start here with your 1st finger in the 5th fret of the 5th string, the blue note is 1 fret higher on the 6th fret of the 5th string. And it works really nice as a little hammer on and flick off, especially if you follow it by using your little finger on the 8th fret of the thicker string. The timing of that lick, it can be quite difficult. Leave that 1st note and then go diddle-dum really quickly at the end. Of course, that requires a little bit of a fast hammer-on and flick-off technique, but that's something that you've got to work on. So that's the kind of so a couple of cool tricks. And you've got your and you that kind of sliding the first finger back. So they're the common ways that you'd find it in position 1. Now we've also been through position 2, so I want to talk about that one as well, because it's also got a couple of interesting tricks in it. Now the first one is, or the most commonly used one, is that the blue note falls here. If you're playing up your position 2, you'd go first finger, fourth finger, first finger now on the 7th fret of the 3rd string, and the blue note would be in between there now with the 2nd finger in the 8th fret, and that would normally, if you were playing the scale, be followed by the 3rd finger in the 9th fret. So that first part of the scale, if I just play up and down it, would be. That same lick that I just showed you in position 1, this one, you could use the same thing here, starting with your first finger on the 7th fret. Quite a nice little trick. That one, because it's what's called chromatic, and it's going the notes D, D sharp and E, or D, E flat and E, just works really nice because those 3 fingers are just sitting there. Little tricks that you can start to muck around with there using that 2nd finger. So it's quite an easy place to find it. It's definitely worth practicing that one as you play up your minor pentatonic scale, sometimes throwing in that blue note. The other really cool place to use it in position 2 is in the 11th fret of the thinner string. So this is another good reason for practicing your position 2 using the 1st and 3rd fingers on the thinnest 2 strings. There you got that blue note there, finishing with your little finger. Really funky little sounds, especially starting with the 3rd finger, the 10th fret. Hammer on the little finger on the 11th, flick it off, and then flick off your 3rd finger back to the 8th fret. Lots of different little ways of using that blue note. I should point out that there's one other place where the blue note's found, which is by, if you're in position 2, first finger, 7th fret of the 5th string, you could also slide that back a fret, just like we did before in position 1 on the 2nd string. You can do the same thing on the 5th string. Used a lot less because you don't tend to play kind of blues licks that far down the neck that often. Of course sometimes you do, but not very often. So just be aware of that one. Have a little bit of a play about. The blues scale is a really, really important one. It's good to get it kind of down as best you can, but remember, it's not really, I don't generally recommend practicing the blues scale up and down. Just get used to using that blue note and incorporating that into your minor pentatonic licks. So I hope that gives you a few ideas on how to use the blues scale and a little bit what it's about. Like I said, just be careful with the note, don't be hitting it too often, and it's kind of like a bit of a spice, you know, it's adding a bit of dissonance to your sound, and too much of it, like too much spice in your cooking, kind of ruins the dish and makes you feel it's a bit like, oh, it's a blues scale again, you know. So leave it as like, wow, that's an interesting sound, a bit tense. It's quite important to learn how to use these kind of spices well. So hope that makes sense and it helps that improve your blues, and I'll see you for another lesson very soon. Later.